Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Tuba People TV, where we talk about Arnold Jacobs all the time. Puddles and I are here in beautiful Memphis, Tennessee, with Scott Moore. Scott, principal trumpeter of the Memphis Symphony Orchestra since when?
1988, I came to Memphis, yeah.
It's been a good time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Up for parole almost any time now.
I won't shake your hand because you said you were sick.
We'll pretend, yeah.
We'll do this.
Just had the flu, yeah. So.
Great. Scott and I recently met online through our mutual friend Kevin Sanders. So I did not know that you had studies with Jacobs. So I was really happy that Kevin made this point to me.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah.
great. So you studied in Boston?
I did. So I grew up in Mississippi. And my first teacher, Mike Ewald, was teaching at Delta State, which is not far from where I lived as a kid. He took a job in the middle of my studies at Delta State at McNeese State in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So I went down there and finished my bachelor's there. He was, West Coast kind of guy, gone to UCLA or USC, had studied with John Kleiman, who was first trumpet in 20th Century Fox. So it was very straight ahead, almost a lead type of sound, very, Mike Ewald was just the most musical player, and also just really could get that sound just really zipping. Just great teacher for me at such a young age. He went on to University of Illinois after that. But anyway, after I left Louisiana, I went to Boston, New England Conservatory, studied my first year there with Bob Nagel, and my second year with Charlie Schlueter. So I had, about as many different extremes as one can have as a trumpet player, I think. I had the, more bright West Coast sound. I had Bob Nagel, who was like basically the archetype of the old New York sound.
Right.
He recorded with Stravinsky, Soldier's Tale and Octet and all that stuff. And then Charlie Schlueter, who was very innovative in his own concepts, drove, had kind of a symbiotic relationship with Dave Monette as far as instrument creation and as far as his concepts of sound, got some great ideas from all of those people, of course, but, I was kind of a mess for a while, So I had been to, I guess right before I went to Boston, Susan Slaughter, who was principal trumpet in the St. Louis Symphony, had this thing that she would host in the summers called Trumpet Lab. And so there was just a trumpet section, number of us, and we lived at her house for a week, and we basically went through all the orchestral repertoire you can imagine. It was amazing, all day, every day, playing through the orchestral repertoire.
Wow.
And, all that personal coaching from her, and she talked about Jacobs a lot. Jacobs was a big influence in her life, And I know after, right before I came to Memphis, the summer before I came to Memphis, actually, I was at National Orchestral Institute. Manny Laureano was one of the trumpet faculty they brought in, and he also talked a lot about Jacobs, and so when I found myself at this place where I was having conflict of all these different concepts, I thought it'd be great to go see Jacobs because so many people who I respected so much had gotten so much from him. And so, I started going seeing him. I guess it was probably 89, 90 in the summers. I would go up, I'd
So it was
say-
after you were here?
It was after I came to Memphis,
Wow,
that's right.
okay.
Yeah. So, and I started going in the summers. I planned it around concerts I wanted to see with the Chicago Symphony at Ravinia. And so I go up to see him, always call him. And I loved how he's always like, call me the night before to make sure I'm still alive. But, my lessons with him were great. And I, based on what I'd heard from so many people who had studied with him, I had an expectation going in, because of all the bags and the tubes and the inspirometers and stuff. And of course his teaching studio, looked like, 1950s mad scientist movie or something, with all the blips and, all these crazy machines and stuff.
Yeah.
It was cool. But, I think my first lesson, we sat and talked for a minute, and he asked what I wanted. I said, well, I'm going to these auditions, and I really want to, do better at these auditions, and so I think I played like Promenade or something, and first thing he said was, Scott, you need to stop thinking of yourself as being in competition with the other trumpet players at these auditions. You need to think of yourself in competition with Phil Smith and Bud Herseth, and that was a huge paradigm shift for me, probably one of the most impactful things anyone ever said to me, because at that moment I was like, that's right. I mean, if I really want to be the best, I have to, compare myself and emulate, not really emulate, but, take what I want to do, even past some of those concepts, and if you come short and you fail, then, so what, you got a lot better, what I mean? So that was, that was great. And, he was always about, maximum resonance, minimum effort, which was so perfect and key for, the things that I really gravitated toward naturally. And it helped to reinforce that with me because, flip back to Arben's number 11, which he probably has everybody play, when you start that F, and then bum, 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 and almost everyone is like bum, bum, bum. That F, which you just played 2 seconds ago, is a completely different sound than it just was.
Right.
So making sure that you pay attention to that sound, every single time, so that every note has that maximum resonance,
Right.
I mean, Jimmy Stamp, who was a famous trumpet teacher, and he has a great warm-up method that most trumpet players do. He says, when going up, think down. When going down, think up. And the way I've come out on it is, when going up, think down. When going down, think down. Because you always need to look for that bottom of the sound so that you get that most resonance in it.
Yeah.
Nobody. I always ask trumpet players, I'm like, do you ever get told that you're flat? No, it's with trumpet players is we're sharp, right? Because we tend to tense up and tighten up to get the sound out. And but if we always look for that bottom and just start to trust it, with that resonance, that Jake talked about, and even when he just spoke, his voice would hurt your ears almost, because he had so much ring to his voice, So yeah, I mean, I think it was my second summer of going to see him. And I finally said, so Mr. Jacobs, everybody's always talking about they got these bags and tubes and stuff that, you do. And he's like, oh, you don't need any of that. I was like, okay, great, I guess. But he goes, I mean, I can show you how it works if you want. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'd like to feel like I'm getting the full Arnold Jacobs experience. So he took me through all this stuff. And quite honestly, I don't really remember what a lot of it did.
Right.
Right. I mean, to Charlie Schlueter's credit, he was really big on, full breath and relaxed breaths,
Right.
And, the concept of letting the air come out instead of making the air come out. So, and, as I get older, yeah, sometimes I get lazy about that, I'm not gonna lie. But, it is a great basis, if you really think about letting the air out, letting the sound, project instead of making it project. All these things just work so much easier for you and can contribute to longevity in your career, I think.
That's great. Scott, what do you recall from those, just getting back to those initial lessons or your lessons in total with Jacobs, what do you recall other than what you had mentioned already?
Well, I mean, such a great guy. I remember his voice more than anything, just that booming, resonant voice, And I don't know how we got on this one day, but he was talking about the Dies Irae in Symphony Fantastique. And he said they were doing a recording of it, and the engineer came over to a loudspeaker while they were recording the Dies Irae and says, I need more bassoons. He goes, Scott, I'd been playing that piece for 30 years and I never knew there were bassoons playing with us. Like, yeah, all right, he's one of us. Kind of like when I discovered that there are woodwinds at the beginning of Chike 4, you know?
Yeah.
Who knew? But, and yeah, and just, you know, so great. And, you know, so encouraging, but never missed anything. His ears were great, you know? And, you know, back to the articulation thing, when I talked to him about that, I remember, you know, one of the things that kind of, a memory that kind of helped me get out of the funk I was in was his saying that, you know, if you can say it with your tongue, you should be able to do it on the instrument. And so I was having that disconnect between the instrument and what I could say. So if you can go ta 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 ta, you should be able to do that on the horn, you know. So if you go ta 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 ta, and then you pick up the horn, you know, which I had gotten into, you know, then yeah, there's a problem with that's happening between when you pick that horn up. And so finding that place where everything resonated so that I could do whatever I wanted with the tongue was important. I know that he would write on my music sometimes big capital H-A, all right, ha. And then on top of the H, he'd write a small lowercase t, right? And so that's like the articulation thing. So you get a ta, 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 you know, so you're not thinking of ta, ta, you know, like that. You're thinking ta, so you're thinking of that ha, burst of air. And, you know, like staccato notes, he would always be like, ho, 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 ho. You know, if you can do that, then you can play staccato, you know, is basically what he was saying. And so those types of things, you know, stick with me.
Yeah, I remember in Gail Williams' interview, she talked about how Jacobs said, we don't talk like this.
That's right.
We don't emphasize the consonant, we emphasize the vowel.
That's right.
And I remember Jacobs always talking about how great sound is found in the study of the vowel. And so just it sounds like what he did on your music was he was emphasizing the vowel and reducing the importance of
That's
the
exactly
consonant.
right. That's exactly right. And that's, you know, I mean, it's so true. I mean, you know, if you want to play, you know, something big and full, you put that T, that hard T on the front of it, well, that's a burst of fast air. And to back that up without there being a break in the sound, you have to follow it with fast air. And it winds up being a sound that compresses like that. So, you know, so you're going like T, 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 you know, instead of do, do, you know. Right. So I'm just like allowing the sound to go, to let the resonance provide clarity and projection, you know, so.
You had mentioned that Manny Laureano and Susan Slaughter both were influential in your
Yes.
your learning, and they had both mentioned Jacobs. They're both trumpet players. What did you have any trepidation or curiousness about studying with a tuba player? Was that?
Oh, Lord, no. You know, I mean, I think I've learned more from good musicians, you know, just even hearing good musicians who weren't trumpet players than I have from trumpet players, to be honest, you know. Again, like I say, the way I play is the way I play. And I think most good trumpet players will probably, you know, prefer the way they do it over other trumpet players, you know. So I probably have learned more from, I'd say, good trombone players over the years, hearing good trombone players, because of that ability for them to hit the sweet spot of the instrument on every note, you know, and not have to bend, you know, the pitch, where it is. That's why I got a trigger on my main tuning slide, so that I can, you know, bring my G on top of the staff down to pitch, you know, wherever it is, and any note that I have that's sharp, I can bring it down, you know. So I'm not having to bend with my face all the time, you know, because, you know, trombone players can do that, you know, and that, I think that's what we should as trumpet players go for, hitting that resonant sweet spot on every note that we play while still being in tune, you know.
Right. I remember him talking about the concept of working just a little bit less hard.
Yeah.
You know, just don't work so hard. Work a little bit less hard. Find that sweet spot.
That's right, and that's
that balance between effort and weakness.
That's right. That's also a saying in golf. You know, we say try less hard.
Right.
You know, so you know, again, I can't tell you how much I learned from golf. That's helped me play trumpet. Of course, if you saw my golf swing, you would not believe that, but you know, but it's you know, it really, there's so much mentally that it's just the best. before.
Yeah, it's interesting. After starting this project some years ago, there was a fellow who would write for a fishing magazine. And he would actually message me and tell me how much he was enjoying these interviews because they related to fishing.
That's fascinating.
It really is kind of, it's hashtag JakePed is for life.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Not just for music. But,
Yeah.
Wow, that's really quite amazing. Do you remember? Did he ever talk? I remember in Bob Doerr's interview, Bob talked about how Jacobs got Bob to use on his lower notes a bit thicker airstream, a bit wider sound, and then that would, as he ascended, that would create a wider sound as he ascended. Did you ever do that?
Yeah, very. So when I went to him the time he told me I'd be done by 40, one thing we worked on that day, and probably the next few times I would go to see him, was the fact that he said it sounded like I was playing 3 different trumpets. I had a low trumpet, a middle trumpet, and a high trumpet. And he says the middle trumpet sounds pretty good. So you just need to work on expanding the middle register, which I thought was a great way to look at it, Right. So, basically find a note, a G in the staff, that is a good note for you, and then I would copy it at the octave, and he's had me play it with lots of vibrato and all this stuff, which, I don't use a lot of vibrato generally, but, for the purpose of the exercise, just kind of get everything kind of like, more open and, and then copy that at the top octave, to kind of help get that same sound, that same feel of ease, on the notes where I'd been, because, I wanted to be a lead player when I was younger, so I get in the upper register, so I'm like, sow, so to be able to like, open that up and be able to just kind of sit on top with, a sound that's not so strident, that helped me greatly. That concept, expanding the middle register, was, absolutely key, And the nice thing is I can still do the zip when I want to, so that never goes away. Like
Right.
he always says, he goes, we're not replacing bad habits with good habits, we're adding new habits, and I thought that was a great way to look at things.
Yeah,
too.
exactly right. Yeah, he would say you can't break an old habit, but you can replace it with a new one.
There you go.
And so that's, I would imagine that's the same thing with golf too. You always want to work on what you want to do, not what you don't want to do.
That's right. Yeah.
When you think about, when you place your thoughts on what you don't want to do, you just make what you don't want to do stronger.
That's right. That's right.
So that's good.
The brain doesn't hear the word don't, That's another thing.
Right.
A concept from a golf book called Golf is Not a Game of Perfect by Bob Rotella, great book. But, the brain doesn't hear the word don't. So don't clam the high C, clam the high C.
That's what the brain hears, clam the high C.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, you just got to think about, you have to trust. It's like doing it a million times and thinking about the resonance and the sound. Because if you just think about the accuracy of that note, then thoughts of sound and resonance and effortlessness go out the window, and you're going to clam it because your lip and the instrument are in disagreement with each other, which is why all response issues happen. When your lip and your instrument don't agree with each other, it's a recipe for disaster.
That's very true. I remember the use of vibrato. Obviously, he used a lot of vibrato in his playing. That was sort of his characteristic, his unique characteristic. But in terms of the pedagogy, I remember him talking about vibrato as being a way to really find that sweet spot in the sound, that maximum resonance in the sound with that minimal effort. So that minimal effort, maximum results idea. So I don't know if he may have mentioned that when he was working with you about that.
He may have, I don't know.
But that vibrato seemed to be a good technique for you.
Yeah, well, somewhere in there,
Yeah.
you're going to find the spot that's got the most,
Exactly.
ring in the sound, So, and it's all about finding it. Sometimes I'll just do it with a bending tone, and as you're bending back up, there's that spot where all of a sudden the sound is like, it's got that life to it, And of course, most trumpet players keep going. They go past that, so that they're above the resonant center, and it's like, like that. So you got to stop when you get that shimmery stuff. But I think you're absolutely right, and he may have talked about that. I know he talked about a lot also how he had his practice studio when he was at Curtis, like right next to the front door.
Yeah.
And so he said, Stokowski and all these famous people will come walking by that door. So he's like, make sure He had to make sure he always sounded good when he was practicing, you know, and he would do the stuff he couldn't really do so well at home, I guess. But, you know, and that's a good lesson too, you know, even when you're warming up, you know, you got to play with the most beautiful sound like you're playing on stage somewhere, you know. You know, all these famous trumpet players just walked in to listen to you warm up, you know. So it's like, you can't just like go through the paces. Every note you play has to have purpose, I think. You know?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And yeah, he called that training the brain, you know, and,
yeah.
he had intuited that, you know, when you were talking about his time at Curtis, you know, he's 15 years old. He didn't know what he would later know about the mind and how it works, but he just, you know, common sense told him that I don't want to suck when Stokowski's walking by.
I mean, you know, right?
So he would work on always sounding good, and he would break the rules. You know, he would take things down an octave, or take things up an octave, or slow things down, or speed things up, or whatever he had to do to sound great in that practice room.
That's cool.
And so he was really working towards developing this habit of just excellence all the time. And like you mentioned, he would, the stuff that really needed to be worked out, he would do it back at his apartment in Philadelphia, away from the spotlight.
That's cool.
But
I remember the first time I heard Chicago Symphony. This is when I was in school in Boston. Jacobs was still, you know, playing. So this would have been 1985, I think. They were in Carnegie Hall, and so a bunch of us went down from Boston for 2 nights. And first night they did Czech 5, and Firebird, the Bersusen finale from Firebird was the encore, you know, and then the Mahler 7 the next night, you know, and I mean we're up in the balcony in Carnegie Hall, and there's Jacobs, who's toward the end of his career, you know, with one lung, just obliterating the most famous brass section in the world, you know, and you know from that period probably the most renowned brass section of all time, you know, you know. So it was just, it was really something, you know. And so I know that's, I mean, talk about maximum resonance with minimum effort, right? I mean, it was just, there it was on display right there, you know.
yeah, for sure. I think I studied with him starting in '81, and you know, he was, when I first started studying with him, he was in fine health. He was 64, 65, something like that. And then, but the next year or two, he was having some problems. He had a heart attack. There was a cancer scare, and you know, I'd go to some lessons where he was really just pale because he was sick, and or he was on medication or some sort of therapy related to the cancer, and he did not look well at all. And then I'd go and get my second lesson over at Orchestra Hall. He'd be there on stage, and I'd hear this guy who was really not well sound very good. Maybe not 1960s, you know, version of Jacobs, but it was, like you say, he was producing a big sound. And he would mention how it doesn't take that much strength or effort to play well, you know, and I'd then hear that in practical terms from my seat in Orchestra Hall, where I'd hear this really sick fellow just exploding with amazing sound.
That's something.
Yeah, it was really, really amazing. Well, Scott, I won't shake your hand because you said that you're getting over the flu and you're kind enough to not want to spread it. But I do want to point out that we found out during our pre-conversation that we have a couple of mutual friends, Bob Dorr and Dave Beaumonte. So we want to give a shout out to those guys. And it's really been a great pleasure to meet you.
Likewise.
I appreciate you taking the time out to come and talk, and then also to coordinate. We did a little messaging beforehand and made sure that we coordinated our shirts.
Had to be done.
It had to be done. I like this color on you.
Well, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the red one that you had in that one
eyes.
picture,
Yeah.
I think maybe it was too red.
Oh, the red with the
Yeah.
the fruit on it.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a kinder, gentler.
Yeah, this brings out my eyes, whereas the red brings out my face.
Yeah,
you know, so.
right. That's good.
Which we have lots of subscribers who I'm convinced they come to the symphony every concert because they want to be there when I finally explode.
Well, that's just like Herseth, though.
That's right. Apparently, my face is as red as Bud's was back in the day.
He got very red.
He did indeed.
Yeah, I mean, you were there. is he going to make it through the
Yeah.
end of the concert?
His response was always, well, at least you know I'm trying hard, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Puddles wanted me to be sure and give you this Genuine Collectors Tuba People TV, and maybe because you're a trumpet player, we'll call it TPTV for Trumpet People TV today.
Whatever.
Whatever, but
I'm
it's
just-
yours
yeah,
to keep.
I'm just glad to have this empty glass, but you know, we'll fix that soon enough.
All right. Once you get all the way better.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much, Scott. I'll
You're
give
welcome.
you a, how about?
There we go.
All right. And now back to you.